Suga Sean O'Malley makes his second title defense for the bantamweight strap, this time against Merab Dvalishvili. Now, a boogeyman at 135 pounds, if you will. I see now that O'Malley is a minus 125 favorite. That's crazy to me. John, you've watched Sean rise from the Contender Series to UFC champ really quickly. How has he grown in your mind, inside the cage, outside the cage, and what does he do better now?
Well, steadily, he's grown really in all phases, all on strength and conditioning commitment with sort of a breathing component under Brandon Harris, Taquinho Mendez handling his jiu-jitsu, and the great Tim Welch putting it all together, and then a willing student and pupil in Sean O'Malley, right, who has maximized his developmental time, worked on, I think, his durability. You know, one thing that I have wondered aloud about is how long can he sustain this championship reign, because there have been some in-fight injuries. And, I think there was a torn labrum in his hip back in the day as well, but it's been all systems go. He is a smart fighter, high fight IQ, has always been an elite striker, underrated, more willing grappler than you would think. And I think in a lot of scenarios in which he has been tested, I think namely when he was injured in the Aljamain Sterling fight, was still able to get it done and then find that kill shot, as he has done so many times in the UFC. So it has been steady. If you're not getting better in modern day mixed martial arts, you're getting worse. And he's certainly getting better. And if anybody deserves to headline a show of this magnitude and a true one-of-one type live event, and now that the curtain has been peeled back for me, Ethan, and the world, I can tell you, I'd be stunned if I see another one of these in my lifetime. Maybe in yours, Ethan. Sean O'Malley deserves to headline.
Right on. Now, I got a question in the chat from Scott. This is really good because I wanted to hit
on Scott.
Some Aljo versus Sean questions. Scott asked us, where do you stand on Tim Welch, O'Malley's head coach, hollering, "You got to go, Aljo," in the middle of the fight, I guess imitating Aljamain Sterling's head coach? I mean, is there an ethical line there? And can maybe we expect something like that with Merab at UFC 306?
I don't think there's an ethical line there. We did bring the question to Ray Longo, who was in the opposing corner, and his word is bond to me. He says it's much ado about nothing that Aljamain didn't hear it. And what's the trite saying? All is fair in love and war. I think there are going to be a lot of screaming voices, and it's up to you, I think, as the athlete in that setting to determine which vocal is your coach's. So we talked about it for the first time several weeks after it was maybe sensationalized. So, I don't know that we need to give it too much more attention than that. And I guess the only thing that maybe was newsworthy was that supposedly, and I don't know this to be true, there were maybe some referee warnings about it. But I haven't peeled back the rule book. So, hopefully it's not part of the narrative at UFC 306.
Right on. With that Sterling fight in Boston, I mean, what did you kind of glean from it? Because when I try to handicap, O'Malley's current fight against Merab, I think Sterling is a really good comp, but they're different in some senses. Of course, Merab a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more top position in his game, and certainly more cardio. Is that the comp you're kind of looking at when you're profiling some of the outcomes for this fight?
No, Merab does not have a comp. He really does not. I do have a quote for you from one of their contemporaries, Corey Sandhagen, that I want to share in a minute because I do think that it is newsworthy. But I can't think of a comp really for Merab. There are a lot of guys who are offense all the time. Ricky Simone comes to mind. But his ability to weaponize cardiovascular strength and pace and pressure, Ray Longo has acknowledged that he's going to have to lean on some durability. He's going to have to eat some shots to realize success in this fight. But I just don't know that there's any sort of comp. Chaining, takedowns, nonstop wrestling. It's, I think anybody who's been through sort of a high intensity interval training, strength and conditioning workout and quit like me. No, I mean, I really don't quit, but I don't keep up the pace. This guy just has a gear of mental and physical toughness that I think a lot of men, able-bodied men, can't relate to. But let me share this quote with you if I could, because Corey Sandhagen is a guy who is in the bracket with these guys. So he said on the Anik and Florian podcast, it's a tough fight for both guys, but specifically for Merab, every round begins on the feet, and he doesn't clear the gap as good as some of the other guys. Keep space. Sean O'Malley keeps space, makes it hard to get close. Height advantage, athletic attributes, anything can happen, but hard to imagine any scenario whereby Merab wins that dominantly. And I think that's reflective in the betting market a little bit. I was surprised to see a relatively swollen plus number next to the name Sean O'Malley. And I was fully expectant that he would close the betting favorite with respect to Merab. And minus 125 next to Sean, I think looks a little bit more accurate. I try to forecast these before they come out, and I thought Sean would have been minus 160 or so, and I was way off as usual.
Yeah, you think about O'Malley, right? He has cashed as a big underdog in recent fights, of course, against Petr Yan. That was the one that gave him a little bit more respect from the odds makers, and then he was the underdog at closing time against Sterling. But yeah, he opened as a bigger underdog. Now Pick'em, now O'Malley favored. I mean, my gut tells me with somebody like Merab, with his unique skill set, the cardio, the relentlessness, I kind of want to lay that bet at plus 100 now. I think that's really smart. But John, as you've told me, you think this is properly placed with O'Malley as the favorite.
Well, the only thing that I can really say predictively is that I can't get into any great detail. I just think relative to what Sean has done and has done in a championship setting of late, I think he deserves that acknowledgement. One thing we haven't talked about is sort of how the aesthetic and the visuals might impact the fights. And it's crazy to think, obviously, about UFC title fights happening in the UFC Apex with no fans. And now for me, having seen what I've seen, it's wild to think about UFC fights happening in this atmosphere. One thing I guess I can tell you is that they have gone to great lengths to sort of tone things down for when the fight's going to be going on. Dude, it is the sickest fucking shit that you have ever seen. And I'm trying to cuss less. Mom, she's all over us twin boys. But dude, I'm telling you, Ethan, like the pay-per-view is going to be, I would think, almost as spectacular. Dude, it's unbelievable. It is true. My mind was effectively blown yesterday. I can't wait for September 14th.
I'm excited too. And I'm excited to see how high that swear jar gets between you and your brother every Thursday at Oddshark.
We got to nip it in the bud. It's somewhat of a verbal crutch, but not in this case. When we're talking about this event at Sphere, we're not supposed to call it the Sphere. But when we're talking about this event at Sphere, dude, to say no stone unturned, dude, this is like a Conor McGregor pay-per-view on every performance-enhancing drug in the world. It is, and I'm not overstating it. That's not hyperbolic. It's unbelievable. And I just can't wait for MMA fans. Yes, it's a love letter to Mexico and Mexican combat sports and the fighting spirit of that nation. And for me as a boxing journalist first, I went to all those fights. I love Marco Antonio Barrera and everybody else, but this night, visually surrounded by UFC title fights, is going to be, I think, what Dana White describes it, the most spectacular sporting event of all time. And I think it can actually live up to that. And 24 hours ago, I was in the dark.
If you can think back to the butterflies you had before calling UFC 300 versus UFC 306, I mean, how did those two compare?
So UFC 300 was like any other pay-per-view. And yeah, I mean, maybe when I'm packing my suitcase to fly out for a Conor McGregor pay-per-view, I think I messaged Conor privately. The only thing bigger than UFC 300 is UFC XXX McGregor versus anybody. So yeah, but this one feels like the biggest and most complicated and most intensive live event that I have been assigned. So yeah, we're focused, bro. We're going to be using every minute right up until fight time.